You have queued up the Roulette Tapes, a program of adventurous music and conversation recorded at the New York City Concert Hall, Roulette. You can hear thousands of concert recordings from Roulette's past and present and find news of upcoming events celebrating innovation and imagination at roulette.org. Aren't you curious?
You're listening to the Roulette Tapes. I'm Susan James. I'll be your host for this edition. California-based woodwind player and composer Vinny Golia is our feature today. He spoke to us about the full range of musical instruments that he plays, musicians he likes to work with, including guitarist Nels Cline and saxophonist Tim Berne, and his plans for his large ensemble to be presented at Roulette. Here's Vinny Golia.
I had the illusion when I first started playing that I would just play soprano saxophone. There were very few soprano saxophone players when I started playing. There was Wayne Shorter, of course, but Steve Lacy was the king. And then a few people were picking it up. Monty Waters, Dave Liebman, Steve Grossman. These are just people that I can remember. Zoot Sims, actually, who I have to say, I didn't get into his playing soprano until much later, but oh my God, he's got such an amazing sound. So I was a visual artist in New York, and that's how I met a lot of the people that I knew. I was very fortunate to meet a lot of people who were on the cutting edge of things at that time. Anthony Braxton, Dave Holland, Chick Corea, Dave Liebman, Steve Grossman, Mike Brecker. They were all part of this association called the Free Music Communications. Well, not everyone was. That's not true. Not everyone was. Dave was not, and Braxton was not. But there was a large group, let's say, based around Richie Barrett and Dave Liebman at that time in the 70s, late 60s or early 70s. And I was the only visual artist. So I wound up doing all the place cards and brochures and all these things and stuff. And I would, on occasion, get this giant urge to play the saxophone. So I did an album cover for Chick Corea. I had an old saxophone, a soprano. And with the money from the album cover and that old soprano, I traded that in to get a new soprano. So that was what I had. And I started traveling around and painting and doing things, wound up in California, of course. But I had no money coming in, so I started calling people I knew to look for work. And I had my education credentials. And there was a job opening. A friend of mine was a bassist. Reed Lawson was a bassist, but he was also a lawyer working for the Zuni Indians. He said, well, there's a school teaching job here, but it's a substitute. He said, you can come down and interview for it. You could stay with me. And I went down there and stayed with him. And I got the job, but Native Americans are pretty hardy people, so they weren't out of work much. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And Reed had seen that I play saxophone. He said, oh, let's play it. Reed was like transcribing Ravi Shankar sitar solos and playing them on the bass. He was he's an incredibly accomplished musician. I was just starting. I knew 5 scales. So he said, oh no, I'll write out you some exercises and we can play in the evening. We practice those in the daytime, we'll play in the evening. So we started playing every day. And then his band came. So they let me play with them. And they said, we like the soprano, but can you play flute? And I said, oh, I think so. So I got a flute and got a book that literally said how to play the flute. And I stood with the book and read the book and started to learn how to play the flute. The band was there for about a month or so and then went out on the road. And they said, yeah, you should come too. So within a year of having them learn, I started going on the road. And then it started, like somebody said, well, we like your sound, but, we need something bigger. Can you play tenor? Okay, so that happened. I was kind of, a half-ass player. I was learning. I had a girlfriend. We moved back to California. She was from California. And I started really hunkering down on the horns, and I always wanted to play clarinet. That was something that I always wanted to do. And so I started to get a clarinet. I mean, I just slowly amassed them. The bass clarinet came before the clarinet because I heard Eric Dolphy, and that was like, So slowly but surely, I started just to amass them. And then, but the way I would get them would be like, I would hear a use for them, and then I would try to find one in a price range that I could afford. And slowly but surely, I built up a pretty big assortment of reeds. So now I play the entire families of all the things. So I can go from piccolo to contrabass flute, or soprillo, which is the smallest saxophone, to contrabass saxophone. And I have A-flat clarinet, which is the smallest, all the way down to the contra clarinets. Matter of fact, in some cases, I have two different versions, like a wood one or a metal one, or something like that. I messed around with the bassoon for a little while. I don't play it much anymore. And the English horn, which is like, the kind of proverbial thorn in my side. I love the sound, but I can get 3 or 4 notes really well. When those notes are gone, then it's like sink or swim. On a good reed day, I might be able to do it, but I don't really pull it out in public anymore. I started to work with some theater groups. I teach at Cal Arts. Travis Preston is the head of it. He was doing these versions of King Lear and Macbeth and Prometheus and et cetera, et cetera. And I got the call to do a lot of the music for that. So I started working with colleagues and singing bells and all kinds of that kind of stuff. So I started then branching into different instruments from other parts of the world. And along the line, I met a lot of people who did a similar thing, like J.D. Perrin, for example. He's a wonderful clarinetist, and he turned me on to the alto clarinet. So from the alto clarinet, I got turned on to the bassett on my own. And then right now, I'm working on a new instrument. It's a tenor clarinet, but it's tuned in the Bowen Pierce system. It doesn't tune in 12ths, it tunes in 13ths. So you can't use it with traditional instruments, but you can use it in electronic music and more percussion style music. So I got that to use in certain groups that I play in now. Sure, it was Tim Berne on alto saxophone. I played multiple woodwinds. Ken Filiano played bass, and Michael T.A. Thompson played drums and percussion. Some really old friends and really fun people to play with, actually. They're very creative. I'd say Ken Filiano is like one of the few people that you play with that you never know what's going to happen. That's a really great gift to be that spontaneous. And I like to use people that I trust, yeah. So Tim is an old friend. I've been playing with him since 1978, and Ken I met in 1984, although he says it was earlier, but we started playing in 1984. And Michael was a friend of Ken's, and Michael was recommended by Ken very highly, and I've been playing with him quite a lot since I met him. He's a wonderful a percussionist and drummer. Now, you mentioned Nels. Nels is on my second record. That's 1978. So we started playing together, I would say, around 76 or 77. And I also played with his brother quite a bit, Alex. They're twins. It's kind of interesting. They think and play very similar ideas. And when you're playing with them, sometimes they do things together that you think are, I didn't write that, you know. It's very interesting when you play with them. They have a telepathy that's really wonderful. But Nels, was born in LA, and we spent a lot of time playing and doing things. And when he moved to New York, he started to get more recognition because, in New York, people actually care about the music. And out here, it's kind of like a vast wasteland when it comes to, like any kind of support. So I was really happy to see not only that he got some recognition for being the player he is, but also the fact that all that recognition doesn't change him at all. His head is still the same hat size. So Scott Fields, Toshi Makihara, and myself. Scott Fields is a guitarist. I think he was living in Minnesota or something like that at the time. And I had seen his first record because Greg Kelly was on it, and I was really kind of interested to see what Greg Kelly was doing, because usually at that time Greg Kelly was playing a lot of textural music and such, and Scott Fields writes kind of linear stuff. I mean, Greg Kelly just ate it up. I mean, really beautiful sound and great facility playing the lines. I was really impressed with that. And out of the blue, Scott Fields calls and says, "You're Vinny Golia?" "Yes, I'm doing a tour with Toshi Makihara, a percussionist from Pennsylvania. Would you like to play?" I said, "Sure." And then and in the mail, I got this a tome of music, and everything was kind of scored out. And playing that kind of music is not my forte. That's actually, like another reason I often don't play with him as much, because a lot of his stuff is scored really long, episodic scored music. I mean, I'm good for short bursts. I don't like to read a lot. I like to improvise a lot, but I do write a lot. Anyway, we got to rehearse in Pennsylvania, and it was pretty apparent that there's a problem in how the music was going to go. So it seemed that Toshi didn't read music, so Scott didn't know that at first. So we wound up just improvising. Toshi's a really creative percussionist, so I mean, like anything he came up with was like just amazingly. It was really creative, and Scott played with a lot of pedals and sounds and stuff. So he had a conception in mind that had to change for how everybody played together, and he adapted to that. Although it wasn't exactly what he wanted. I started playing at Roulette when it was in the loft upstairs someplace. Maybe it was Jim's loft, but I don't remember what I brought in there, except for one group that was a bit larger. Jim has always been very supportive of the music that I've been making, and I know of him as a kind of a improvising kind of new music, classical trombonist, and I had one of his recordings. And when I found that he had a space, I contacted him, and he was very open. I mean, to having me play, and he knew a little bit about the music already, about what I was doing, and he's always been very supportive. And I really thank him for that, But over the years, since he had the loft all the way to the present, he's always been very, very good about, like being supportive of not just me, but, a lot of people that are outside of the kind of New York realm. of music.
Vinny Golia will bring his large ensemble to Roulette this year. Here he talks about the instrumentation and techniques he uses for conducting his chamber orchestra.
I'm really stoked on the personnel of the band, and this is one of the first times I think I'm presenting large ensemble of my own music and creation since I've started, and I've been doing large ensemble since 1982. So I'm very excited about this particular concert. 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, bass trombone, tuba, 5 or 6, I think it's 6 woodwinds, some doubling, not all. Tim just plays alto, Sarah Schoenbeck just plays bassoon. 2 percussionists, 1 percussion, 1 drums, and vibes and marimba, piano. What am I missing? It's supposed to add up to about 30 people. Myself, of course. 2 violins, viola, cello, 2 basses. So it's a rather large group that can do a lot of more like a chamber orchestra. And that's more how I look at it. I look at it not so much like big band. I'm not really crazy about big bands, but I do like chamber groups. And also, I don't like to have a plethora of saxophones. I like clarinets and double reeds. Oh yeah, there's oboe, and there's an oboist who's also doubling on an English horn, for example. So, I mean, just that gives you bassoon, the oboe, and flute. There's one woman that plays flute and alto flute. Josh Stinton, for example, plays alto flute, contrabass clarinet, and baritone. Tim plays alto. Ingrid Labrock plays soprano and tenor. I don't think, actually, I don't know if I'll be playing much. I'm conducting most of the time with a group that size. So there's a lot of written music, but there's also a lot of improvisation. And the main thing about that concert is that over the years, since '82, I developed kind of a way of conducting and using whiteboard and cards to use the orchestra and as the actual improvising instrument, as opposed to just playing music or just doing hand signals and doing that stuff. And, I played with Blakeslee and I played with Walter Thompson, and I'm familiar with that. I also played with Braxton, who also does that stuff, and Leo Smith. So, so I just, as we all do, we all come up with our own ways of making it efficient. And I feel like this is a really responsive group of players who can improvise and read really well. And that's why it should be a real exciting concert.
The Roulette Tapes is a production of Roulette Intermedium. This project is made possible in part with support from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Grammy Museum, and has been named a 2021 Webby Award honoree. Our executive producer is David Weinstein. I'm Susan James. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the Roulette Tapes, a program of adventurous music and conversation. This series is produced by Roulette Intermedium. You can find thousands of concert recordings from Roulette's archives and news of upcoming events at roulette.org.